Hello, welcome back. This is Jerry Ludlow with instructions on how I paint watercolours. This is a photograph of Willy Lott's house in Suffolk, which is famous for being in the painting The Hay Wain by John Constable. The photograph was taken by Stephen Burns, and I really like the way that he's captured the light on the face of the buildings. It was here, here and here, and the reflections here, the light there, there and there. Also catching the light on the reeds there and just to the left there, and the darks to the side of the house to the left there, and going to the right of the house there. There's some really nice darks. I'll keep this tree in there to the right hand side, and there again there's some nice darks in the water there, and surrounding the house as well. Then there's these green lilies and weeds broken up here and there. They'll look very nice in the painting. I won't use the whole of this photograph. I'm going to be cropping it about there. And here's the crop version where you can see the house is just to the left of centre as the point of interest, and there's just enough of that light pathway on the left, and just got the tree in on the right hand side. Now I'm going to start doing the drawing. I'm using a 2B pencil, and the paper is Saunders Waterman, £150, and it's the Saunders Rough. Just putting a few markers in to try and get the size right, with it fitting onto the sheet of paper. Quite a bit of architecture here, so trying to make things precise. Don't worry too much about going wrong with these initial stages with the drawing. Just make things bigger and smaller as necessary, and use your eraser if you need to. Here I'm looking at the photograph and making the roof slightly bigger than what I did when I first started, because I'd want this to fit exactly as it is in the photograph without adding too much more to either side of it. And then once I'm reasonably happy, I'll go over it again, and it makes it easier for you to see my drawing too. Putting things fairly straight with the walls when the walls are slightly wonky, I suppose you'd call it, as they built things back in those days. There's my horizon line about there. And just a rough indication for some of the foliage, and that tree at the side that I'm going to be putting in. And there's really quite nice looking chimneys, the tall one of the building at the back. And then the timber beams on the side of the house with the windows. Taking my time with these buildings, trying to get the proportions right. And now with the reflections, being careful to get the measurements right, which is a mirror of the building in the water, with very little movement in the water. It's a nice sunny, calm day with no wind. You could use your pencil, or if you've got a ruler, use that for getting the measurements exactly right, because it will be the same as the building but upside down. And parts of this building will be obscured when I put the green weeds and lilies and things in the water. Then there's these few trees, putting in the tree shapes. Getting a nice varied line, so they don't all look the same. Then there's these two trunks to the right of the building that I think look very nice, and I'm going to get their reflections in the water below as well. And I'm going to give myself an indication of where the lilies are and the weeds, and add some more when it comes to painting it. Doesn't look too bad to me, proportion wise. Make this chimney just a bit taller. Pencil's quite dark, so you can see my drawing relatively clearly. Just double checking these measurements. So quite a bit of care taken with this drawing to get the architecture looking right. As unlike painting nature, trees and rivers and things, you do have to get it right because it will attract your eye. Things that are not quite straight, not quite right, not aligned. Here is my palette and a quick run through of the colours. On the bottom of the palette on the left is sepia, Payne's grey, French ultramarine, cobalt blue, cerulean blue, cobalt turquoise, neutral tint, and on the top light red, raw umber, burnt sienna, raw sienna, quinacridone gold, hooker's green, and on the right side sap green, cadmium yellow, alizarin crimson, opera rose, cadmium red, jaune brilliant, lavender, and I do use white sometimes and white gouache. Now I'm going to start the painting. Apologies for the light across the top of the painting. It's the blinds in the studio are faulty and some of the sunlight's coming through, but it will only be here for a short while and then it will go. Starting with the sky, I'm using cobalt blue and a little light red and an even smaller amount of alizarin crimson. Trying to make sure I've got enough paint here because I'm going to be doing the sky and the water at the same time, and I'm going to be using the same mix. And a very dilute raw sienna, lots of water. I think I might need a bit more of the blue. So a bit more water and a bit more of the paints. Don't want to run out. Just quickly putting on some shapes for the blue sky. And softening it with some clean water here and there. Bringing it down over the trees. Working quite fast as it just dry quite fast as I haven't wet the paper beforehand. Now going into the raw sienna mix, merging that with the blues, leaving some of the white paper here and there, taking it down behind the trees to the right of the house. And then straight in with the water. Mindful of the shadow side of the house, and quite a bit of this is going to be covered up as the painting progresses anyway. So not too much fussing about. It's good to get the all the paper covered. It's much less intimidating. It's still wet up in the sky area, so I just took some of those hard edges out. And letting this dry a little bit now. I normally use mops for that particular part of the painting, medium-sized mops. And now I'm using a dagger brush, which is a brush with a very fine point on it. Holds a lot of paint. Doing the roof of the house in burnt sienna, as well as the other roof to the side. And with the lower roof, just leaving a slight gap at the top of the roof, leaving a white line. And with the chimney on the side, using some light red into the mixture that was on the palette, and some darks, neutral tint, just to vary the colours on that chimney on the side of the building. And a slightly darker version of it reflecting in the water. With reflections, they come up normally a bit darker. Leaving some gaps there for the lilies on the surface of the water. Straight in with the chimney on the larger part of the house, letting that bleed in just a little bit into the roof colour. This is light green and ultramarine blue, or French ultramarine. And a little bit of raw sienna. And then another mixture of raw sienna and cadmium yellow. Using that mixture first of all to do the light area at the side of the house, above the bushes. And now the light area on the right, going into the water. Now with that dark green mixture, starting to do the trees. Being mindful of what shapes the trees are and varying the colour. You notice me dipping into various colours as I work my way across the paper, hoping to get most of this covered in just one layer, with a light layer over the top afterwards. Always looks much fresher not to put too many layers of paint on. And just bringing the paint down as the tree growth would be. Using up and down strokes. I've left a couple of branches which I'll keep in untouched in just plain paper to paint later on, which will add a bit of interest. Always try and avoid large areas of the same colour, especially in the greens. Makes it look very bland. Now I've actually dried it off with the hairdryer and cut that part out, which is why it jolted, and done the left hand side with the same sequence. As you can see, there's various shades of greens and blues and yellows. Working my way down. The trees to the shrubs and bushes, and the reeds as well that are at the side of the lake. Nice dark colour reflections. These will dry out a little bit lighter though. The brush that I'm using for a lot of the foliage here is actually quite an old brush and not a particularly expensive one. It's a medium-sized round student's brush, I think it's called. I bought a few of these a few years ago, and as they're wearing out, I quite like them for painting the painting trees and leaves and things. Now I'm using the same brush for doing the lilies. I'll vary the colour of the lilies as well. Darker as they're nearer. And mindful of the direction that they're going in. I'll separate them quite a bit close up, but as I get nearer to the far shore, they'll just be closer together. And in the distance, not fussing about too much. You can't really see the gaps in between the lilies in the distance. Also a good way of connecting all the painted to parts of the painting to each other. This is a colour called Jaune Brilliant, which is, I hope that's how you say it, with a lot of water. And in this instance, it comes up as sort of what I would say the old magnolia colour on houses. You can make the colour up with raw sienna and white, but I've got the pre-made here. Just going over all the areas with the same wash. And darkening the colour up with a little bit of green in it for the reflections in the lake, as they'll be just a little bit darker. Working a bit more slowly now to just make sure that some of the structure on the building is correct, and looking where I can darken some of the foliage on the trees. This is Hooker's Green, which is a good colour to use as a mix, but you really do need to deaden it down with other colours, otherwise it will just take over. started to come from the edge of the lake towards the bottom of the paper with nice darks. Which actually come up quite blue. Varying the intensity of it with some water. Just working around these shapes of the lilies. And as I work towards you on the water, I like to make the colours darker. So really getting quite dark around these lilies at the bottom of the page, at the bottom of the paper. Still leaving quite a bit of white paper. Looking at the trees and where they are in relation to the house, and making it the mirror opposite in the water below, and just allowing for a few ripples. And then doing the same thing the other side. It's quite time consuming this, because you have to be accurate and cut round the green areas. And I'm mindful not to cover them up, and to leave some white edges, a little bit of sparkle on the paper. And getting some real dark green in there. Trying to vary it with such a large area of blues and greens. Trying to keep it interesting. Using the Jaune Brilliant mixture with a little green in it, to start putting in the shadow side of the house, which is the left hand side, and then this will be reflected in the water. And now the shadow on the roof to the right hand side, which is in burnt sienna. Just start bringing the house to life a little bit. And popping in some light red as well. You have to take your time with these structural parts of the painting, trying to get them right. And now this is shadow colour, which I like to use, alizarin crimson and cobalt blue, and a little bit of raw umber. I'm just putting some clean water on the edges so that it merges into the colours that are already there. You don't have that hard edge. And doing the same the other side. It looks the wrong colour when you put it on, but once it dries, that blends in quite nicely to the existing colour. Just be careful when you mix it not to put too much of the alizarin crimson in it. Trees are always darker at the bottom in the shade. As you can see, I'm dipping into the existing mixes that are there, and in this instance I'm adding Payne's Grey and some raw sienna, doing the tree that is quite close on the right hand side, and then just darkening it up a little with some French ultramarine. Not making too much of that. And these nice trunks that are showing just break up that green mass and putting the reflections in. Things like putting the trunks in is all part of when you do your initial planning. I always think of things like that, especially when I'm doing groups of trees, just to break it up a little bit. Now I've let it dry again to move on to the next part. Next part will be the darks. Neutral tint and a rigger brush, which is a very small fine tip brush used for fine work. And I'm going to go around the house doing the windows and timbers. I've left the window areas white, untouched, and I'll be putting in the windows, not completely filling in that each square, just leaving a little chink of light, which looks better than just doing a kind of a black box with it. Adding to the shadows on the chimneys. And putting in a slightly more wavy line on these windows in the water below. You can see it really starts to make a difference when you start putting these darks in. It's starting to look more like a completed painting. And the shadow side on those tree trunks. Not really going to put anything much in the way of branches in those groups of trees. So I quite like the way they've turned out as they are. And then with some darks, doing some broken lines for where the riverbank is. And putting some light colour, cadmium yellow, which is the path that's at the side of the house. And then there was a little bush just there at the back of it. Moving around the painting with this small brush. And then putting the impression of some ripples in the water. Once again, try not to overdo this. This is another thing that is addictive. varying the shoreline now with some browns, raw umber, burnt sienna, and then going back and putting some darks in. Just tidying up some of those edges that are a bit scruffy on the house. When I do areas like that, I do try to do a bit of a broken line rather than just one straight continuous line if I can. Make it look more painterly. And there's a very small shadow on that side of the house where the chimney is, where it runs up the side of the wall, and then give the impression of some bricks there as well with some of the dark colour. And there was a shrub or sort of bush or something growing there, which I'm going to put in because it looks quite effective with that light against the dark. Just doing what would be some shadows, some dark bits on these bushes and reed beds. And taking the tape off and going to have a look at it once again after it's had the tape removed. There's quite a lot going on there. See if I've missed anything. Yeah, there was a couple of things that I did notice that I had missed, and that was on the reflection of the roof. There was some white paper still, so I put some red and some green for the lilies. But overall, quite pleased with that, and I hope you'll have a go at it.